Hello, people. We're here today at Success After Lockdown podcast on behalf of Exodus Productions. And so we have a really, really important group today that we're going to talk to. And I'm going to give you a little input about Success After Lockdown. So, our mission, our purpose for Success After Lockdown is to highlight those men and women that's formerly incarcerated, that's doing the right thing, that's doing what they're supposed to do in life, that comes home and staying home. So a lot of times, this recidivism rate in the criminal justice system is overshadowed by those men and women that's coming home and staying home, and that's doing something with their lives. And that's what our purpose here, that's what our mission is here for today. And to my right, I have my partner, Mr. Anthony Colon.
I am super excited. I'm your co-host, Anthony Colon, here at Success After Lockdown, as you already know. Today's interviewee, a very, very important one, played a very pivotal role in families integrating and reunited while incarcerated. And I think she just did an amazing job when you hear her story and how she got started with the Osborne Association and what it brings to the table and how big they have become now in the state of New York and the work that they are doing. We are truly so grateful that, unfortunate on what happened and how it got started, but the purpose that you fulfilled while doing this and where it's at today. And with that, I want to introduce everybody to Miss Elizabeth Gaynes. Likes to go by Liz. Okay, and
played a huge, intricate part in my life.
Yes,
with my son growing up, incarcerated with me.
That's right, and we're gonna get to that story. And next to her, we have Rashawn Small. Okay. Rashawn has an interesting story as well on how they all collectively got together from the past and to where they at now and what he's doing. And with that, man, we're going to start this show. Thank you, too, for being on the show.
My pleasure.
I'm excited. I'm sure our audience is going to be excited to hear about the Osborne Association and what you're doing now. Omenta, right?
Yeah,
like
that's
to go
cool.
by
That's
Omenta.
Cool. That's cool. Yeah,
Let's go with Omenta, right?
People
That's
that
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
so we Liz and Omenta, we were in Sing Sing together, and we was doing big things in Sing Sing, man. As far as our growth and development, Omenta actually introduced me to Liz. I don't think you remember that, but when I first came to Sing Sing, I actually followed him. I followed him from up top, in Clinton. We was in Clinton together, and he transitioned to Sing Sing and went to school. And he used to write me. We used to write each other. So we send families our letters, and they'll get the letters to us, and he told me about school. And back then, I just had my GED in Clinton, because I came to prison without a GED. And so that's something that I looked forward to when he used to explain to me about the higher education, and that's what drove me to transitioning with him. So 2006 I transitioned down there, and I actually met Liz in the Osborne Association, and they played a big part. Like I said, she played an intricate part in my life with my son, because my son was 14 at the time. And I haven't seen him since he was 4 months old.
Wow.
So the first time I seen him was on a visit floor in Sing Sing Correctional Facility, 2007.
Facilitated by...
That's right, facilitated by Osborne, that's right. And Tanya Krupet, she was my teacher in the parenting class. I was actually in the parenting class.
Right, I mean, listen,
likewise.
Believe it or not, we have to take those parenting classes, right? But,
That's right.
I know that I really, really want to hear, Ms. Gaynes, what made you start the Osborne Association? Tell us a little bit about you and why your passion was to dedicate so much time and such energy into this program.
Yeah, well, first of all, I didn't actually start the Osborne
Okay.
Association. It was founded by a guy who was probably out of his mind because he'd been the mayor of Auburn and he lived up in Auburn, New York. He was very wealthy. His family was, they were suffragettes and abolitionists way back. And he got permission to go into prison disguised as an incarcerated person.
Wow.
And it changed his life. But that was, he became the warden of Sing Sing in 1914. That's over 100 years ago.
Wow.
And believed in the possibility of people, but he didn't last long because he liked the idea of what he called inmate self-governance and thought that people should have power, and it didn't go over well. He was a little before his time, let's say.
Oh.
So when I got there in 1984, it had gone down to, he had died and the people he'd hired were gone, and so it had gone down to like 2 people. But I was really excited to be there because I had started initially I'd gone to law school and lived in Syracuse, New York, and I was in my last year of law school when the Attica Rebellion happened. And so all of the young lawyers and law students were like drawn to seeing this. We just could not understand that our state went in and basically massacred people like a turkey shoot. So my first sort of job, and it wasn't even my job as a law student, was volunteering to work on the case of the Attica brothers, and actually prior to that, the Auburn, because there had also been a rebellion. So, and people should really see the movie this year, Attica, because Stanley Nelson did an amazing job and got amazing footage of watching literally the state go in and just shoot and kill dozens of people.
Yeah, not for that, but I remember the first time I went to Attica, I was at that facility, and you could still see when you pull up, I know from when I went there, the crack of that wall that's still there, and inside the D block yard, if you walk around the D block yard, you can still see some of the bullet holes on some of the brick walls and fences and some of the windows from that day.
Oh yeah.
And when you go out to the yard, out of all the blocks that they have there, when you go out to the yard, right before you go out to the yard, on the ceiling is painted red.
So
Well, the
what
the person that I ended up connecting with and representing, he was the Minister of Defense for Black Panther Party, and his job, so to speak, during the rebellion was guarding the security for D Block at that door. And at the time when they came in for the assault, they were looking for the leaders, and so he was shot initially with those 270 rifles with dum-dum bullets, and then was carried inside. A guard from Auburn came, recognized him because he had been transferred from Auburn with several other men, and they shot him 6 more times down his back, which in the movie you actually hear gunshots after the assault. So when I met him, he was still in the hospital, but he was among the people being charged as a leader. And long story short, the Attica cases fell apart ultimately, in part because of the testimony that he and others provided. And longer story short, I married him. And so we lived in Albany. I ended up working for Prisoners Legal Services to do prison work, which was not why I went to law school, but it sort of takes over. But unfortunately, when I was about as pregnant as Amenta's wife was when I last saw her, he was arrested again, allegedly for killing 2 police officers in New York City. They said he was in the Black Liberation Army, and so he was not present when my daughter Imani was born. He was still in jail. It took 2 years, and eventually he was found not guilty, and came home. But in the course of that time, he does so much damage that he had been shot again. He'd been because they thought he had killed 2 police officers, they beat him. They had 140 breaks in his
Cheekbone.
in his bones. They had to completely rebuild his eye sockets.
Oh, wow.
And, and it affected him. And frankly, we didn't do as well as, there's success after lockdown, but there's also trauma after lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
And so eventually, we ended up separating, and by then we had another child, and I moved back to New York and took the job at Osborne, and he stayed down where we were in Carolina, in Virginia, Maryland area. And then he got arrested again, and he was on parole, should have known better. It was, as many of my favorite people inside, they found a way to say it wasn't really his fault. It wasn't. He wasn't the shooter. You can kind of make it like it's not quite you. It took him a long time to come to terms with it, but the reality was I'm raising these two children, and I still cared very much for him, and he was their father, and I felt like even though he and I were having a little bit of trouble, and even though I thought he wasn't a great citizen, he was a great father, and he'd always wanted to be there for the kids. But there was no way, and when you went to visit in Virginia, it was horrible, frankly. But I'd come from New York, and I was at Osborne trying to figure out exactly what we should be doing, because we were very small and not knowing exactly what was the best thing to do. And in the meantime, I'm trying to figure out how to have him involved in the kids' lives. And so we figured a lot of things out. He would write to them and send them cartoons, and I was so lucky that I had a job because I could afford the phone calls, of which
Extremely
I figured it out. I spent
It's expensive.
$50,000 over the 25 years that he was incarcerated. And I don't even know how many. I brought the kids to see him every 6 weeks or so, and it was 500 miles away, and you'd have to stay someplace down there. So I learned that this was both possible, that my kids really felt like he was still in their lives. And in New York, I could do things in New York because I knew people, and I had worked at Prisoners Legal Services, and I knew the system, and I couldn't do anything for my own kids or him, but I thought, well, maybe I could do something in New York where I actually knew people. So, and at that time, there were some programs for women who were imprisoned, who are mothers, to try to stay connected to their kids because of these cool nuns. But there was nothing for the men. And I thought, you know what, the people that run prisons are men. They're probably fathers. They probably think that fathers are important. Why don't I just go and tell them, I have this idea that, we want to make visiting nicer, and we want to do what they do for the women, and we could have a parenting class, and we could, talk to people, and we could reach out to their families. And they were like, well, okay, if you can raise the money, then they let us do it. We started at a medium security prison. Taconic was then a men's prison. It's not now. And when they closed it, they said, where else did we want to go? And I wanted to go to Sing Sing. Well, they said it had to be a medium, and Sing Sing at that time, Tappan, had two prisons there. One was a medium and one was a maximum. And I knew, but there was only one visiting room. So I figured if we said we would go to Tappan, we would end up going to
Max.
Sing Sing. Now, I grew up just down the river from Sing Sing. And I knew the area, and I knew the jail. And I grew up with two boys whose parents were Ethel and Julius Rosenberg, who had been executed at Sing Sing. So I was aware of it. It was where the electric chair was. And when I was growing up in 3rd and 4th grade, if your electricity went off, they told you it was because they were electrocuting somebody. And we believed this. Anyway, I thought it was important to be at Sing Sing. It meant something. And what we're lucky about was that Sing Sing is one of the larger prisons in New York. And that means that those prisons are both training facilities for new officers, but they also have first deputy superintendents who generally are in training to become superintendents someplace else. So what would happen is the first deps at Sing Sing would get transferred to another prison, and then they would call and say, we don't have family works here. we need this because the kids are running all over the visiting room because they didn't have the children's centers like we had at Sing Sing, and they wanted it. So we ended up like now being in multiple prisons because originally the prison was like, why would we want to make prison pretty for people? The kids are going to want to go to prison if we make it nice. It's like, no, kids are not stupid. They know that they don't get to leave. Like, we just don't want it to be traumatic for them to be able to see their parents. And but some of them were very against it when we wanted to go to the next prison. The next one was Woodburn because Superintendent Keene went there. And I said, listen, I'm not going to try to convince them. We sent the visiting room sergeant from Sing Sing to go up and tell the officers that run the visiting room there, oh, you're going to love this. The kids are all in the center. They're not running around. So, we've always had to do things that showed that corrections saw an advantage for them, which was keep the children busy. Oh, that makes sense. Or, have the programs work. We were lucky though because the superintendent at one of those times was this guy Brian Fisher, who's currently on our board of directors. And he walked in one night to one of the classes when I was there, and he asked the men, he said, I want to know how long, why are you in this program? How long had you been incarcerated before you decided to take this course? Why did you take it? And what would make it better? And they said, well, it was usually about 4 or 5 years, and the reason why they came in was because some older guy in the yard pulled them aside and said, look, asshole, if you keep standing out here in the yard doing absolutely nothing for the rest of your life, it's not going to go well for you.
Right.
You need to get into something. And our program had no barriers. Like, it wasn't like a college program where you had to be admitted. It was like, if you wanted to be there, you could be there. And we had clerks and people that worked for Osborne in the visiting room who were like emissaries, who were like being able to pull guys and watching them in their visits, not knowing what to do with their kids and saying you should really, do this. So we didn't even have to advertise because the men themselves talked to each other.
Yes.
But the other thing they told the superintendent that they wanted and the course was missing was they wanted their wives and partners to be included. They wanted to do more about relationships because so many of them, some of them, they didn't know, they were no longer in a relationship with the mothers of their children, but they wanted their kids to come. Or they were in great relationships, but the communication was hard. And I knew this really well because I had spent some time trying to communicate in a visiting room with somebody that I loved very much. And it's complicated. Because
it sounds like you had a plan, not to cut you off. It sounds like you strategically picked the location to put everything, like you played chess. You didn't play checkers. You went in there playing chess.
Well, some people would say I was playing Jenga, but yes.
Okay, because that's the way it sounded. Like she put it all together because you knew you had the connection, and what started out you having that inside knowledge of what was going on and how to get there.
Well, I had experienced somebody. Because Joe Mo came home once before he went back in, I had a good idea of what it would be like to have somebody come home, and I wanted to reach out to the women as well because they're nutty when they come home.
Yeah.
Like, he came home, he would take a shower, then he would take a bath, then he wanted to wear shower shoes into the shower, and then he had the TV on with the radio on at the same time, and if I came in and put my coat down, he would like hang it up right away, and he couldn't believe that he could adjust the
OCD.
heat and the cold, and so it was always the temperature was all over the place, and and then he would go out, and I would worry, and I would say, "Where are you going?" He goes, "I'm going out," and I'd say, "But where are you going?" And he'd go, "You're not my parole officer." And I would say, "Yeah, I know, but I don't want to get a call in the middle of the night," and so. And he was sort of like, I don't know where I'm going because I can, because I want to see the sky.
Right.
Because I just, and so having gone through this, I felt like my role was more to communicate with their children's mothers, their mothers, their partners, their wives, because I knew that it could go not well. And I have a sister here who could be on this call too, because some of these things, it's just true about the impact and the trauma of incarceration that you're going to have some of those issues. So I was planning, but on the other hand, I made huge mistakes. For example, we started out teaching about Lamaze deliveries and nutrition and all of this. And I thought it was very important to know about, taking good care of children. And then I get a call from some nice woman saying, "Are you the one who's telling my husband about not giving sugar to children? Because I told him, look, you get out here and buy groceries, then you can tell me what to shop for. But until then, I'm buying Cocoa Crisps or whatever." And so I realized that, arming the men with information about nutrition and caring for children, they were just using it against the women in their lives and starting to tell them what to do. And I thought that was not my intention. So the good part was, after that, we decided to add a course on healthy relationships and connected couples where people could come in and spend a day actually communicating with their intimate partners. So
emotional intelligence there.
Yeah, but see, everything that we did was because we screwed up before. So you're right, I had a plan, but you should know that the plan went wrong on numerous occasions.
Absolutely. And I was a part of healthy relationships as well. And taking that class, I think that class actually inspired me to create this program. That's one of the things that inspired me. And when I created this, was creating Success After Lockdown, I created it under, formerly incarcerated men and women. However, I also know that the women actually do the time as well, and that's something that I looked at, and I look forward to actually interviewing more, women that was a part of men's life, in that incarceration, because they also are successful in their own right, and we go through those things, all those things that you said, coming home and still wearing my slippers in the shower. This is something that I had to overcome. At the same time, I remember, we were child caregivers. That's it, that was our title, me and a mentor under your regime, Osborne, and that actually helped a lot to bring in one's manhood.
Well, it's interesting. We hired incarcerated people as caregivers for the center, and that was really important to us because, first of all, you learn something from doing that, but also just to be coming from outside, you don't have the same sense of it, and I felt like they would be able to be a little better at that. You're not going to say something right when the guy is there, but you can because you're not going to say something in front of his wife and in front of the children, but I knew that they were with them afterwards, and they could say, you can't discipline a child from prison, right? I mean, they're going to go home, so yelling at them or doing things, and was able to not just learn themselves about being with kids, but really being able to help other men to do better at that, because it's hard under every circumstance to be a parent of young children. But also, it was, for us, it meant that we had to think of ourselves as an organization that hired and included people who were currently incarcerated. Osborne certainly has tons of staff who formerly incarcerated, but we liked the idea of having staff that was currently incarcerated as our clerks, but also as the caregivers. And sometimes it was kind of news to us that they didn't necessarily know how to play those games. It turns out, I came from a middle class background where everybody knew how to play Candyland and checkers and Chutes and Ladders and everything, and suddenly we're asking these guys to show the men how to read the books, how to be with their kids and play games, and sometimes we had to send books home with them so that they could learn them.
Listen, I can tell you now that it's definitely not easy, and I tell people all the time, like, I know how to do a lot of things. What I don't know how to still do is still be a father. I got a 28-year-old daughter, a 26-year-old son, a 10-year-old daughter, and that's one of my biggest challenges every day, trying to communicate with the older ones. Not so much the little one right now, because in her eyes I'm still like that person. That's great and amazing, but my other kids, I just can't get through them no matter what I do, and it frustrates me, right? But I know Eric as a kid growing up, and his story and how you integrated with his son Karan and him together, and looking at them now from 14 to now, the relationship that they have is pretty amazing, and like you played a big part of that. And I want to get into a mentor story as well, into the role that you play. And I believe, from all our viewers out there, listeners, like, thank you. Like, it took a courageous woman to say, you know what, I'm going to dedicate my time, effort, and energy into not just my life and my kids, but for everyone to have that same opportunity. It takes a special kind of person, so thank you for that.
I appreciate your saying that, but to me, and I think a lot of people who work in an area where they're directly affected, which is why these men do what they do as well, it's therapeutic. If you can't do something for yourself or for your own children, if you can do it for somebody else, it does make you feel better. So, this was not altruistic. This was, important. Like, getting Karan reconnected to his father after we, connected to him, I can't tell you how many times we go back to thinking about that as important to know that what we do makes a difference. Because you don't know. You fail more than you succeed in this work. And I don't mean failing because people go back to prison. Our folks don't go back to prison.
Right.
But they also don't necessarily heal from
The trauma.
what happens. And as you pointed out, being a parent is not a day at the beach no matter what. And you're right, at 10 they haven't gone bad yet, but they stopped listening. My granddaughter is 11 and a half, and I'm like looking at her going, how long do I have before
you just tuned me out, right? All the way.
before I'm like nobody. Well, fortunately I'm the grandmother, so I'll probably stay important as long as I have a credit card. But
Right.
to buy Robux, or whatever they are. But I appreciate your saying that, because the truth is that's our pay, right? At the end of the day, is feeling like you've made some kind of difference. And the other thing that has been important to me is that, because of Attica, I came to it thinking everybody that worked in corrections was bad, every officer, every something. And I was forced to confront the fact that if you don't want people to judge our people, you can't be so fast at judging other people.
Right.
Even if they're wearing a uniform. Even if I want to choke the shit out of them. I have to understand that if you believe in the humanity of people, you have to do that. And I want him to tell you when he was training and saw these people in the back of the room and thinking you were in trouble and finding out, because being able to make those relationships the way that they have, because they're successful in part, and so many of our guys are, because they were successful inside. Anyway, I wanted to give him a chance, so
Okay. Wow, that's amazing, Omenta.
Yes.
So I know that you played a pivotal role too with Ms. Gaynes as well, inside and also outside. Please tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what was your connection and what you're doing now. I know you served over 25 years in prison, correct? You've been home 5 years now?
Yeah, August 21st this year will be my 5th year home.
Welcome.
Yeah, so just humbled and grateful. Humbled and grateful to have to be here. Yeah, a little bit like that.
Your body.
Okay, my body. All right, gotta get right. Gotta get used to being in.
Thank you.
Okay, a little bit more.
This right.
I'm good money. All right, good money.
Right there.
Yeah, good money. So yeah, I do. This is my 5th year home, But even before, I want to preface what I say by just simply saying that, people typically see me, they're formerly incarcerated person, you know what I mean, but they don't see the father, right? I'm a father of a beautiful 3.5-year-old son,
Congratulations.
right? So talk about fatherhood, like that has been so rewarding in a lot of ways, certainly. I'm married. I actually was blessed to meet my wife while I was incarcerated. We actually got married a year before I came home. And we talk about being more than just the sum of your past. I like to think of myself as just continually growing and evolving person. And sure, there's the incarceration, right? And this is a lot of things that you can talk about with incarceration, but I tend to focus on the people that I've met. From the professors that I've met who sacrificed their time, their dinners with their families to be in prison with us to help build us and educate and have these intense conversations. I talk about my peers like Eric. Me and Eric met. We met back in the 90s in the trenches in Clinton Correctional Facility. When we were just starting this hard time, and then meeting Liz when I went to Sing Sing. For me, we talk about her history, objectively, like she had certainly a direct impact on my life. You know what I'm saying? Just the relationship piece, the relational piece, right? Having the opportunity to connect with her and just see her passion for the work and realize that there were people who were champion, our cause, champion for giving us an opportunity to be a part of our children's lives, to be part of, have healthier relationships. And I was fortunate to meet her in Sing Sing, when I was doing this time. And I was fortunate also to work in the Children's Center as a caregiver. And to have went through the parenting program, with Dr. Carl Maza, who was instrumental in just my growth as now as a father when I look back. And, working in the Children's Center, which I called it then. I don't know what they call it now.
Family
Center. I'm a little older, so we call it the Children's Center. But it's the Family Center, right? But we had this Family Center and Larry Costa and a bunch of other brothers, and it was there where I was able to reconnect to my own childhood. You know what I'm saying? Like I would color in the Children's Center or the Family Center.
We learned the games.
Yeah, you had to learn the games, right? So you had to go back into your own past. One of the first times after probably 12, 13, 14 years that I was able to decorate a Christmas tree. I had forgotten how I don't know, amazing it was to decorate a Christmas tree. You know what I mean? Color, sit down with children and color. See parents, fathers, struggle with their children and look and, live vicariously through that because I didn't have children at the time. Right. You know what I mean? But I would look and just see and figure out how I would handle certain situations or try to even talk to him, later about how I saw that dynamic play out. You know what I mean? And just having those opportunities to be with people outside of the normal prison environment. You know what I mean? That was so therapeutic for me. You know what I mean? It taught me how to be a better father, right? I think I'm a good father, but a lot of the good that I do with my child today is based on all of those things that I learned while I was incarcerated. You know what I'm saying? So I always, big up, the Osborne Association and Liz Gaynes and all the phenomenal people that I met who came out back, from the community, the society, into the prisons. You know what I mean?
And so we don't have a lot of time with Ms. Gaynes, so what I'm gonna do now is we want to continue talking to you. At the same time, I just want to just express that one more time about what you were just talking about, how intricate the Osborne was. And so I left my son at 4 months old, and I didn't see my son until he was 14 years old.
And I was there that day.
That's right. And what happened is that I was in the parenting class. and writing letters to him. And this is how, he, without, going through the whole story, I was able to reconnect with him. And he could have been anywhere after 14, but he went through the Osborne Association's programs. And he actually worked with them. And he's 29 today, still working with the Osborne Association.
Look at that.
And
Wow.
never been to prison.
Wow.
So I'm blessed. I'm blessed to have the Osborne. I'm blessed to have you as Gaynes, in my life. So I just want you to know that you made a difference.
Yes.
And not only in mine, I'm just a small part of this equation here.
Thousands,
a tiny part.
thousands of people.
Know that.
So I appreciate it, but I also want to point out that you were saying about Quran works with the programs. I learned not only from you guys, but what this really came through Jomo, through my children's father, because that's where we learned the most. And she became kind of this, because we both know her too, because she was going in, talking to them in the parenting class about what it was like for a child growing up with a parent in prison. And I just want to, she now has started her own organization, the Omawali Project, because her dad's name was Jomo Omawali, for what we learned from him, because it was the way he interacted with them. He would read the stories that they were reading, and we would put that in the parenting class. So I appreciate that you're saying me and Osborne, but I also feel like we always have to acknowledge our source.
Yes,
And part of some of the source for this for me was him, and of course the Great Spirit, and my daughter Imani.
Absolutely.
So I just want to say that, because that's watching how he understood that he still had to be a father even from prison was what made me know that you all could be that, and why we were so sure that Quran, when he met you, would know that this was exactly where he needed to be with you. And you're just both such amazing people. The only reason I hate to say it sometimes is that I don't want the public to feel like there's just these exceptions. Like, we found this great guy and this great guy.
Absolutely.
And so even though they really are in some ways unicorns and unique and special, they are, and they're saying I am, but the truth is that the reason all this works is because there are many of us. And
That's right.
Absolutely. And I truly believe that it takes everybody's hard work, dedication, and consistency to continue to move forward. Right? And you have to want it. When an opportunity is presented, you either take it or you ignore it. Right? And those that ignore it wind up later on regretting it. Right? When you follow that path and you say, you know what, I see this opportunity, let me take it. Like these young brothers here, in jail, well, in prison. I remember when they took away the college program. They had the opportunity to step back into that college program. That was a big devastation, for me, because I got my GED in prison. And I wanted to go to college after that, but I can't. I came home, But programs, I tell people all the time, programs or in prison, it's not to make you slave. It's to teach you. Take advantage of it. A lot of people think I'm just gonna sit back and do my time. I don't care. Baby mama drama. I don't care. Kid come see me. I don't care. Then they come home. They wonder why you can't really engage in a decent conversation, because you just didn't care.
And that's why this platform is created, to acknowledge those individuals, like the whole equation, the whole piece of pie, not just some people individually. And I look forward to having Imani on our podcast as well, because she is a success story in her own right as well. And so with that being said, we're gonna close this podcast out so Liz can take care of what she has to, and we appreciate you for coming today.
And real quick before we leave, I'd like to thank all our listeners that who tuned into our podcast. We truly appreciate you, and if you have any questions, please don't feel free to send us an email on successafterlockdown@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube. Please drop your comments.
Anchor, go to Facebook. We on there.
Reach out. We'd love to hear from you. You got a success story, just being home, doing the right thing. That's a success in its own right. And with that being said, man, we're gonna get back to you on the next episode. Thank you too for being on here. Thank you, Miss Elizabeth Gaynes,
Appreciate you.
for your services and what you do and bring to the
Yes.
table. My brother Menta, thank
Thank
you
you.
for
Pleasure.
showing that a person can still come home after doing substantial amount of time and still be productive. We haven't even got into that yet, but we're gonna get into that. All right, my brother.
You really should hear about, because he was working for Osborne after he came home too.
Oh, we had a little quick talk over there.
That's right.
We're gonna get into that, but I know that you gotta go.
Okay.
So we're gonna get into that. All
Okay.
right.